Good morning, Ainsley, Briar, Colette, Mom, Michelle, Ian, Tim, Devin, and Scotty. Yesterday was quite an interesting day. First of all, I got to return those sweatpants, gray ones. The quality wasn't there, no receipt. Got all my money back, which was cash. But I realized, I didn't really want the cash. And Warehouse One has amazing t-shirts. But of course, when I see something so amazing, I think that's a time to practice an 08. And as much as I might want it for myself, just to practice that. I don't know if it's humility or what the right term is, but just to practice that generosity maybe, or that something. And instead of saying, oh, I want that for myself, to practice, oh, I know someone that would like that, or maybe even like it more. And this is one of you out there. You will know exactly who you are. This is the shirt I bought, and you'll be expecting this in the mail, because fortunately, you inadvertently also provided your postal code to me yesterday. You would think it might be Scotty the firefighter. Very close. Very, very, very close to Scotty the firefighter. It would be the person that Scotty the firefighter introduced me and this other person to. He was a common link. Scotty the firefighter was the common link between me and this other person. I also went to a fundraiser for the Rotary last night. That was amazing. I didn't know it was a themed piece. I just knew the time. I went there well beyond fashionably late, like 11 o'clock at night, which was so nice. Got past all the awkwardness of everything. Well, actually, I wanted to go to the Legion. And I was timing my evening out so I could go to the Legion, dance at say 10 o'clock after the meal and stuff, maybe 8 o'clock. But by the time I did get outside, Legion's my first choice. They're packed up, they're gone, they don't get around. No late nights for the Legion. Fortunately, I hadn't been invited and I had made no commitments. So no harm, no foul with the Legion. The Rotary Club, through their network, I actually had a personal invitation to attend this fundraiser for the Rotary Club. And it was described to me as, well, it's a fundraiser. Tickets are $100 to enter into this raffle. It's also free to attend. You can just come and dance. You don't have to pay a thing and just come and dance. The fundraiser portion of the evening, that is a $100 optional ticket. Well, it turns out it was themed because the fundraiser was you put in your $100 and there was 7 or so draws throughout the night for tropical vacations. No, I didn't win anything. No one I knew anything. That's not part of the fun of this video. Grabbed a coffee. Great. Social conventions. I now have something in my hand at a party. We're doing great. Where do I sit? And I get the sense that the room is kind of sizing me up like, oh, like, because I'm the new guy, no one knows who I am. And everyone knows that no one knows who I am. There's definitely this stranger alert and vibe when I walk in. And I'm used to it, but when you know, you know. So I just walk around. I'm not kind of like looking at every chair or anything. I know how to do this. I've done it enough. Well, I get to the back of the room, and that's where I meet these two gentlemen. I almost make the joke when they allow me to sit with them. I almost make the joke. They're like, oh, now we're the bachelor table, or now we're, but I didn't. They allow me to sit next to them. I do not make a joke. I just stay silent. Well, one of the draws is actually for one of the smaller, well, I shouldn't say smaller. Yeah, maybe one of the smaller because the value of all the tropical destinations is in like the thousands of dollars, 7 days, 8 days, whatever, all inclusive, whatever, to these tropical fly you out full events. One of the smaller prizes is like, well, it's only worth $1,000 or 500 or, and it is a 1 hour tour. So maybe $300, a 1 hour tour in one of the local planes at Kissississing. Pilot, chartered flight company, we fly you where you want to go company. And the guy that I was sitting next to, his name's, maybe I'll withhold his name, but turns out, well, he's a pilot, and that's who he's company. And then the guy next to him, as we're chatting, well, he's a mechanic, which is super cool. We ended up having a great evening. I'll advance, and I can maybe provide a better summary of this later tonight. Great memory with them. Finally, when I leave the Civic Center, it's maybe 1 o'clock in the morning, 1:30. And I remember hearing, before we got a tour of the building, which was just lovely, that some of the folks, they weren't ready to go home. Some of the folks were listing their after party location, and that was the Hooter in Creighton, Saskatchewan. So it's 1:30 in the morning. I'm thinking, well, I want to be around people. I want to meet people. I don't want to drink. I don't want to party in that sense of the common term. But I do want to meet people. I do want to be around people. So I head out to Creighton. Fortunately, I've been there a few times, and the bartender has started to know who I am, so I'm able to walk up to the bar and say, I'll have my usual, please. And she knows that's a cranberry juice. I know she's not going to charge me, and she knows that I know that, and she knows that I'm going to give her a $2 tip, anyways, in the form of a toonie. So I sit at my table. There is, people are dancing, but it's not rowdy, but there is people there, it's dancing, it's just lovely. How do I occupy myself in a socially acceptable way when I'm by myself? Well, just head down. I don't want to look at anyone. I don't want anyone to think that I'm, I want to be there, so if someone feels curious, they can approach me, but I'm not comfortable putting myself in a situation where I would be picking the right people that I think would be proper to approach. So I'm writing, and I don't know what to write. I'm just writing the first chapter of this novel, this idea that came to me after a nap just earlier in the day. So I'm finally putting that pen to paper, and I hear this man's voice as the evening progresses. Everyone's pretty much gone. And this is common. This happened a lot. Ainsley Bar. This happened a lot in Craven. People would be asking the bartender about me. So it's a familiar conversation. You hear them ask the bartender, like, "Hey, who's that guy? Hey, hey." Right? And I'm like, I'm not engaging in that. And he's like, well, "What's he doing? Like, it's like, is he undercover or something? Like, what's he writing?" And the bartender, a true bartender, very experienced in a role, says, "Well, some people just come to noisy spaces like this because it actually helps them write." "Well, what's he writing?" "I don't know." "Well, is he a pervert?" And she doesn't even distinguish that with a reply. So, "I wonder what he's writing." "I'm gonna go talk to him." So I hear all this, I'm like, oh man, here we go again. Only this time it's different. In the South, in the prairies, the person always talks, but they never sit down first. They start talking from way up here, and like, hey, what are you writing? Hey, can I read that? Hey, that's happened to me before. In this case, he gets right into my bubble, which he's allowed to do because it's a public space, and he sits right across from me. Doesn't introduce himself, doesn't ask, hey, can I sit with you? He just sits right across from me. Totally loud, public space. And now that he's seated, he's taken a breath or two, and he's noticed that I haven't acknowledged him yet. And he just starts to speak. He's very calm, he's very respectful, he knows this is an important conversation, and he's like, hey, can I talk to you? Or like, I look up and I'm like, whoa, it's a First Nations man. I'm like, well, yeah, of course. What, let's talk. Like, what's on your mind? And one thing led to another. Him and his wife invited me to their space last night. And it's just a beautiful story. I'll have to elaborate on that more another time. I've been invited back over this afternoon at 2:00 to learn more about their culture. It was a very interesting interaction. And this man is clearly, he wants me to learn, but also he wants me to learn how to learn his culture. And he's like, write that down. And okay, I'll write it down. Here's this what you want me to write. And then he would talk about, yeah, so why are you here? Like, you're a reporter? Like, what are you, like, you're writing like a story about us? Why are you asking us all these questions? And this happened several times over the course of like the 2 hours that we were together at their home. And each time I shared with them, I said, well, to be fair, I said, I'll share this with you once more. I said, to be fair, the way I like to make friendships is slowly. We just spend time together and we share stories, but I'm not accustomed to this rapid fire, very fast acquisition of knowledge. Thinking about it now, I would say that's probably how tourists treat First Nations people. I'm not a tourist. One First Nations person, a dear friend of mine, maybe as a joke, maybe as a who knows, they did introduce me to one of their acquaintances or friends as, hey, this is so-and-so, he's a tourist. And I tease them at the moment, I'm not a tourist. So I share that back. I think I was maybe treated as a bit of a tourist yesterday, or being encouraged to treat my newfound would-be friends as a tourist would. At rapid fire, white person, all these questions to the First Nations, because of course as a tourist, you're only going to be spending limited time here, so you want to steal as much knowledge as you can. Then in the end, they give the money and go on their way. I'm not a tourist. I'm here for the long haul. What's the rush? The greatest concern is, of course, damaging that relationship, impeding its growth, or harming it beyond repair and salvage. Which means it's exceptionally important for me to be cautious with any question, to be cautious with my approach. Better to go slow than to do harm and we not grow. But this continues, like, ask us more questions, ask us questions. I keep explaining, like, I'm not accustomed, like, you have to be patient with me. I'm not accustomed to asking so many questions in such a short period of time. I'm accustomed to friendships. And they're like, so who are you writing for? And I explain, well, you're right, I am writing an article. It's for the reminder, and here's the story for that. And they say, oh, so you're a reporter. said, no, I'm not a reporter. Here's the additional story on that. Okay. So ask us a question, anything. I'd come up with a question, and that would get the conversation going again. Or sometimes not. Sometimes I'd ask a question. It didn't stimulate additional knowledge sharing. At the end, my host quizzed me. He said, so what did you learn about First Nations culture? I hope this was received with respect, but I could tell I maybe offended him or surprised him at the very least, because what I said was, well, that's kind of two answers to that. I said, in one way, I learned nothing, because everything that was said today at a high level is very consistent with what I'd come to expect from First Nations. You know, very gracious, very patient, very generous with knowledge and stories, and that is consistent with what has happened here. So, but on the other hand, I've been gifted more details which are new. My host responds, what details? And as I'm sitting here and he's sitting here, not quite across from each other, but kind of almost beside each other, I'm struggling not to look at my notes that the whole time he was encouraging me to take. And I said, well, I'm struggling. What detail can I remember about what I was just gifted? And if I can't remember anything, then I look like a liar. If I can't remember any details, not just to remember something, it's also be consistent with what I just spoke about. If I can't remember a detail, then again, I'm a liar, and that damages the would-be friendship. And finally, I'm able to remember a beautiful detail. And so what I learned was, and I indicated with my thumb the person, because they weren't sitting there. It's like the person that was sitting here, and I used their voice, their name rather. And my host corrects me and said, that's not her name. That's so-and-so. I said, no, I don't mean any disrespect, but I was indicating the seat beside that person, and I believed that was the correct name for that person that's sitting there. So what I learned from her story, or her details, is the question I asked about the first powwow you each attended. Her response was the first powwow she ever attended was actually at her own First Nation, which was her own First Nation's first powwow in many generations to kind of rekindle the culture sharing. So to expand on that, what I further learned is that sometimes the growth and healing of an individual is not just reflected in, but it is in tandem. It is happening at the very same time that these big moments for a community, which maybe outsiders to that community can hear through the radio or the media, that's also happening as above, so below, so to speak. That's also happening at the smaller level on the individual basis. It's also their first time. And that satisfied his question. There was no more quizzing on what I learned, but I want to expand on it and make a note and a record. When I woke up, I had the awareness that, I've heard that Canadian and First Nations are so proud. They're proud, they're proud, they're proud. It's a proud culture. I never really knew what that meant. I had to experience it. What I learned is the word, proud, and the word pride in this sense, is they want so much to share. But at the same time, they have that restraint. They're not just going to start lecturing. They're not just going to take you around your home, because they're also humble. So there's pride in the one hand, like they really want to share. They have all this knowledge. They want to give you they're so joyful about their past. They want to share because of that pride. Like, hey, like I've got something that's really special. But they're also humble. So they wait for you to ask specific pieces, and they do not transition and elaborate. They answer your question, then they stop explaining. They still want to share more, so they encourage you. Ask another question, ask another question. Whereas someone like me, out of bad habits, would segue and transition into talking about another topic. It's First Nations culture, they stop. That is the end of this statement. It answers your question. Now, because I still have pride and I still have energy, I'm going to keep talking, but I'm going to keep talking in a way that encourages you to elicit more knowledge from me. And if that knowledge is elicited, then maybe you would actually want my knowledge. I learned First Nations are also wise. The knowledge you have, the ears of your recipient need to be ready to receive that knowledge. I also learned that First Nations are extremely courageous. They barely met me, and from a quick conversation, they're welcoming right into their home. Which some people say, well, like, you let a white guy into your house? Like, what's the matter with you? Aren't you? So some people would definitely say that is courageous. I think they're also inviting me to be courageous. Don't be alarmed. They've wanted to see my courage, perhaps. I also learned they have a love of people. The First Nations, they have a love of people. They have a love of knowledge. They want to share. I also learned First Nations people are exceptionally wise. And I have to say exceptionally because, at least in the English language, we use the term wise. Oh, this person's wise, this person's wise. I don't think in English-speaking culture we really have an understanding of wisdom. We'd probably expect a wise person to be either a philosopher or maybe a theologian, or maybe an old relative, maybe an old stranger. But for First Nations, they could be in their 20s and there's just amazing wisdom there, where to have pride, to have love, to have humility, to have courage, and just know how to work with each of these pieces takes practice and takes guidance. First Nations people have been guided throughout the decades, throughout the centuries to get to this point. Extremely wise. And last, I would say I learned First Nations people and the culture is very strong. So strong, they're bringing other people in, outsiders, Europeans, English, whatever I'm considered, to add another thread to that fabric, knowing that the only way we can maintain this tapestry as people continue to leave and pass on from our tapestry, we need to constantly bring in more people that have challenging perspectives, that have different knowledge, different wisdom, different courage, different love, so forth. was an extremely long morning Badgey moment. If you made it this far, thank you for humoring me. I will talk about other things another time. C'est tout pour maintenant. Je t'aime beaucoup. À la prochaine fois. English translation is that is all for now. I love you very much. All for now.